Another How I Lead episode where we talk with everyday people who are doing extraordinary things in leadership, whether they realize it or not. These are the episodes that somebody's kind of surprised that someone wants to interview them and talk about their experience and calling, because there are so many nuggets in all of our leadership ministries. And so I hope you're inspired by Ned McArthur, who we talk all things high adventure. Now, we couldn't determine, maybe someone in the audience can help us, is high adventure a scouting term, or have we just sort of adopted it? Do we still use it? Is it in the handbooks? I don't know, but we get the sense of it. That, taking youth, both young men and young women, typically at separate times, to the mountains, taking them on an adventure, hiking, backpacking, canyoneering, whatever it is, like river rafting, right? Some of these experiences that really call them out of themselves, right? And really allow them to step up and develop character and realize how much they can do. And then along the way, finding these spiritual moments. Ned does such a great job of unpacking this and giving us a model to follow. And listen to just how he approaches this while allowing the youth to continue, to stay in that leadership position and to lead, but also giving them ideas and showing them ideas and building up to these high adventure ideas as if it's something we're all oriented towards to do together. And it really makes week-to-week activities easier. So you're going to love this. Share this with every bishop or young women's president or any youth leader that you know that they'll benefit from this. And so here we go. Here's my interview with Ned McArthur. All right, Ned McArthur, welcome to the Leading Saints podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kurt.
Yeah, this is cool. This is one of those things of, like, obviously a lot of people we interview comes from somebody recommending it, but you had the guts to just reach out and say, hey, here's a topic that I have a lot of experience with. Would it be of help? And I'm like, of course it would. So I'm so grateful that you were willing to do that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, being a longtime listener of your podcast, I might refer to this later, but you had a bishop on once who said something to the effect that, I wish people would volunteer for certain things. Mm-hmm. And after hearing that, I thought, I'm just going to do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And please, anybody listening out there, if you feel like you have a unique approach to your calling, or maybe you did a cool activity that was just stellar and successful, like you have an obligation to share that with the world. At least that's my opinion. So, we're happy to give you the megaphone at times and make that happen. So this is cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Whereabouts do you live, and maybe give us your general background?
Well, depending on how much detail you want, I live in Pleasant Grove, Utah currently. I've been here since 97. I graduated school in end of 96. Got here to Utah 97. I grew up mostly in Michigan.
Nice. And, hence the shirt.
There it is.
That's right. And then we're recording this during the first round of March Madness. So
exactly right.
It's very festive.
Unfortunately, we squoze out a victory last night. So that's good.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that background. And so the topic that you reached out to me was about all things high adventure, right?
Yes.
So, and is high adventure, is that a scouting term, or where did that term come from? Can we still use it? Or
I think so.
Okay.
I think it probably did originate in scouting.
Uh-huh.
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a definitive answer.
But all things under that umbrella term of, like, taking young men out into the wilderness, I guess young women as well, depending on, what activity you want to do, and having an adventure in the wilderness, right? Camping and doing all the things. Is that a fair way to frame it?
Absolutely.
Nice. And so are you the guy that's just been in scouting or in young men's for 20 plus years, and you've seen it all and done it all?
So not quite 20 years. So my history with it, in 2009, I was called as a young men's president, and I did that for about 3 years. I got released, and then a year later, I was called as the Varsity Scout leader. So this would have been 2013. And then I did that from 2013 to 2019 and had some great adventures. And so it was just before COVID, before we shut down. And I got called as a Sunday school teacher during COVID years. I was teaching the youth virtually. And then we came back to church, was it 2021? Still continued teaching Sunday school. And there's a point to this, so forgive me for my long-winded response here.
You're good.
Is as a Sunday school teacher, I was teaching with my wife, 12 and 13-year-olds. So I still had this interaction with the youth. But I discovered, or I had this realization, as a Sunday school teacher, I was only teaching about like 9 times a year. Meaning, you've got 12 months. You take out a few weeks for general conference. You take out a few weeks for state conference, a few weeks for just other things. And I all of a sudden felt very underwhelmed. And I thought, what is it I'm good at, or what can I really provide to our ward? What can I do that is meaningful? And I thought, well, I was really good at that stuff, but the bishop's never going to call me to that again. And I stewed on that for months. And it was last April conference, so about a year ago, we were having a get together with some of my friends in the ward, and we were reminiscing on great adventures we had done in young men. And I thought, I ought to volunteer. I ought to go talk to the bishop and say, hey, bishop, my current calling does not challenge me. I can also do this. And I thought about it, and I thought that's awfully presumptuous of you to think that, and, just continue to chew on it. And then one Sunday morning, saying my prayers, I just, excuse me, I had just this moment that said, Ned, you need to go do this. So I call the executive secretary, and, he sets me up with the bishop, and I sit down across the desk from the bishop, and he said, Ned, what can I do for you? And I basically rehearsed that whole scenario to him. And he got a little emotional. I got a little emotional. And he said, Ned, that's exactly what I need. I have a very young bishop. And he said, I'm trying to do all this, and these boys need to have those kinds of experiences. So if you can do it, thank you, and let's do it. Awesome. And so now I am the priest quorum high adventure specialist.
Love it. Throw that specialist to really put a cherry on top, right? That's cool. And I so appreciate you taking the time to unpack that story. And I think it's one that I would really invite others to sit with and model. Oftentimes we kind of sit back and, if the ward needs me, they'll ask, or if the bishopric wants me to do something, they'll ask, or they'll pray about it. Right. But sometimes there's just so many moving parts in those positions, and so many programs and activities and things that, a lot of meeting space gets filled up, and maybe you don't really get an opportunity to sit with some of these things. And so in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with the Lord prompting that in some of the members, saying, you're underwhelmed, lean in. What can you do? And it was very similar to my story. Currently, I'm the Elders Quorum president, and not that I asked for this calling, but me and my bishop were great friends, and we went out to lunch one day, and I just communicated to him. I said, "Hey, listen, you don't need to make me anything specific, but would you put my name on a few lists that you're praying about? Because I feel like I could give more in the ward and than I'm giving." And here I am, involved, right? And of course, the season will pass, and others will have the opportunity to step up. But I think the more proactive we are as a membership to say, I think there's more I could do in this ward, and let me share that idea. In the worst case, he could have said, "Well, Ned, listen, I've got 10, pre-scorm advisors or whatever. I think we're covered, but I'll keep that in mind." Right?
Yes.
So, that's really cool.
And I was fully prepared for that answer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. And I bet he was relieved that someone setting an appointment wasn't looking for a welfare check or have some grave sin.
I almost wanted to play that up with him just to, give him a hard time.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So, well, let's jump into this. Like, I mean, as far as, I'm curious, a few questions come to mind as far as like, should a ward have a specific specialist for high adventure or is it something maybe, a handful of pre-scorm, teacher scorm advisors could handle, but what's a good starting point for developing a really effective high adventure experience in a ward?
Well, the first thing, and this is again another thing I heard on one of your episodes that all played a role in this this experience I just shared, but you called them the dudes, I think.
Oh yeah, that was Kirby Hayborn episode.
Okay,
yeah, he calls them the dudes. Yeah,
and I just said, yeah, the dudes. This is probably something I should have even started with at the beginning. I had some great mentors when I was a young men's president and then again as a varsity scout leader. 3 men, if you don't mind me naming them by name, but Brian Dunford, Jerry Bastian, and Mark Hulick, 3 men that have been in my ward at various times. And I learned so much about mentoring youth from them. And so I'm really a product of them. So to get into this more, I mean, what does a ward need? A ward needs some dudes that are willing to do, I hate to say crazy things, but adventurous things.
Yeah, sure.
Some things that are challenging and not so sanitized.
Yeah. I like that framing, not so sanitized, right? Well, and just sort of like if you told their mothers exactly what you're going to do, they may be a little concerned, right?
That is exactly right. It's funny you say that. I used to have a poster, and it was this guy rock climbing, and the saying was, "Just tell your mom we're going camping."
That's great.
So
that's awesome. And I remember that just the different scout leaders I had over the years, the youth leaders, just some were, I think of Ken Searle, who was a little rough around the edges. I remember sitting, I was probably a 12-year-old sitting around a campfire, and he started telling the story that turned out to be a joke. And he dropped an innocent swear word at the end. Right. And it was sort of like this moment of like, wait, did you guys hear what he just said? Right. What's going on? But it was so endearing in the moment. Like when I think back, I'm like, oh yeah, he's just this normal guy that likes a funny joke that it's a little bit on the edge, So anyways, that's awesome. That's awesome. So just being the mentor, willing to lean in to some of these activities that might be, that might require a waiver from time to time, right?
Yes. And honestly, when I first started doing it, I had, when you start doing it, I had no experience. But the example of these men that I referred to just said, just go do it, try it, make some mistakes, learn from it. And we have it. And, we've done whitewater rafting, we've done canyoneering, we've done backpacking, we've done mountain biking trips, snowshoeing. I think we've done a lot of the really cool stuff.
That's awesome. And so as far as with beginning, I mean, how do you go about just planning a year or getting some of these things, getting some ideas going? Because, there's often this emphasis on, letting the youth lead, but sometimes they don't know what's available out there. So you kind of have to feed them some ideas and things like that. What comes to mind?
So thank you for saying that, because I think that is the I don't know, that's the linchpin. That's the principle that really starts the whole thing. So what I've done and that I found works the best is in October we have a planning meeting.
Hmm.
And in that, and I say planning meeting, it's really more of a planning party. And it's heavy on the party, light on the planning. And what I do is I come to this first with a list of high adventure options. And what I do is I typically create a video that shows each of these activity, being done.
Oh, yeah.
And so they can kind of have some context. What does it look like to go whitewater rafting? Or what does it look like to go backpacking?
Yeah.
And so I show them these videos, and then it's all just kind of multiple choice after them. So they're choosing everything, but I'm giving them the things to choose from.
Hmm. I love that.
And, in this party, like I said, again, it's a party. Because I don't know what your experience was as a youth, but mine was, okay, we're going to have planning. And I just always thought, oh, please just poke me in the eye. This is going to be so painful.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to make it fun, right?
And often, I would have boys say, you know what, that was the best activity of the year. And so it was, this planning, we'd make this movie, we'd play games, we had food. And when I say games, we'd like capture the flag or dodgeball or, um, something active.
Yeah.
And then, at the kind of towards the end of it, hand out this form with the multiple choice and say, hey, what sounds good to you? What do you want to do this year? And, they circle it. And with each activity, I also include a list of preparatory activities that go with that. So if we're going to, for example, choose backpacking, which is what our boys chose for this coming year. And so I said, okay, if we're going to do backpacking, here's all the things that we're going to do as activities that lead up to that.
Yeah.
So again, they kind of have this idea, okay, these are the things we're going to do all year to get ready for that activity.
Mm.
Somebody
Yeah. That's
once
cool.
told me, yeah, that the anticipation is almost as fun as the activity itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And to me, I'm just thinking this really helps planning a lot of the other activities when you have some of these pillar activities that you're sort of building towards. And it's like, oh, now I know what we're going to do for at least two or three of the activities in between those activities, those high adventure activities.
That's exactly right. Now, having said that, this year is a little different for me because um, I'm not an advisor. So I essentially have 1 week a month
Hmm.
for high adventure. And then, they're doing their other activities as part of the.
When you say one week a month, so that's like a midweek activity where you're not necessarily going on a high adventure, but you are preparing for a high adventure, maybe at the church or at your house or whatever.
That's exactly right.
Okay, gotcha. And how many high adventures in a typical year do you do? Does the budget allow for? I mean, what have you found there?
So this year, so like I said, this year we're doing backpacking. So we will, do a 6-day backpacking trip here in the Uinta Mountains of Utah. Um, and so as a lead up to that, we will do a few campouts. So when I say high adventure, I'm really referring to that big one in during the summer.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
then, yeah, lots of other smaller campouts or hikes, things like that in preparation.
Gotcha. So there was a planning activity of some sorts. You talked about different things, including backpacking, and they kind of gathered around that idea of backpacking, and then that's sort of the goal that all right, the summer's coming up, it's happening. Let's talk about whatever it is you talk about, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
as an
That's cool.
example, so we just had our activity this past Wednesday, and the thing we did this month was I taught the boys photography. So as we go out on these big adventures, they know how to take good photos and videos to be able to tell the story of it when they get home.
Yeah, that's so cool. Nice. What other activities have you done or are planning to do?
So for this year, or here, let me also insert this here. So as
Yeah.
part of this preparation that we do in October, then November, what I do is like, okay, we chose backpacking. And so then I come in November with a few different locations or routes to go backpacking.
Mm.
Kind of a mild, moderate, and extreme version. And again, allow them to choose what they want to do. And again, I kind of paint the picture of each one of those, what it looks like, what the experience will be like. And then in January, we have a parents meeting. So then we take, okay, we chose this activity. This is where we're going to go. And then in this parents meeting, we kind of present it to the parents so they can kind of see what we're doing. And then we
Okay.
can nail down dates with all the parents there. Say, okay, hey, we got a vacation here. Oh, we're going to be gone there. And pick the week during the summer that works best for everybody. And then in February, we start the actual activity. So last month, February, we learned how to set up a backpacking tent, how to use a backpacking stove, how to use a water filter. We sampled different backpacking foods. And then the beginning of April, we'll start hiking every Saturday. So we're here in Pleasant Grove, Utah, and our ward is about halfway up the mountain. So we're honestly a mile drive less than to start hiking in the mountains.
Awesome.
So every Saturday we'll start hiking. And then for the month of April, we're going to learn reading a map, using a GPS, navigation skills. In May, we're going to, what are we doing in May? May, we're learning fishing. June, we'll learn some first aid. And then July, into July is when our big high adventure is. And from now until then, we'll be just putting in miles hiking here in our foothills.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anything as far as has budget come into question at all? I mean, you have some stakes are preparing for Trek, and sometimes you have to save over 4 years of partial budgets to build towards a Trek, or maybe a youth conference. They've got some dynamic ideas for youth conference that year. I mean, has any advice come to mind as far as navigating the budget that you have to work with?
Yeah, a couple ideas. So right now, there has not been any. I think our bishop was so happy that we're doing this.
Yeah,
that he has made this a real priority for budgeting issues. In past years, we have done fundraisers to assist in the budget, but I've never had to change an activity or not do something because of budget. Because it was either we got the budget from the ward, did a fundraiser, or honestly, we just have so many people in the ward who I hope believe in the cause and are willing to help financially.
sure. Yeah. Do you typically do a yearly fundraiser of some type?
So this year we have not, but yeah, years past when I was in the scouting, we did the, post the flags in people's yards.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
We have a big enough ward, we would get several $1,000s from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. All right. What about anything else? You talk about just communication with the parents, keeping them in the loop, sort of warming them up to the idea of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And anything else with communication that comes to mind?
Oh yeah. I had this experience this is just a few weeks ago that reminded me that, as much as you think you have a lot to learn. We were, what was it? It was a ward conference, and we had all the young men and their parents with the stake president talking about the youth program as part of, it was during the second hour of our ward conference. And the stake president asked a question. He said, if you were to choose one thing, what would make the youth program better? And the very first thing that popped in my mind was communication with the parents. In that some of the parents want all the information and all the details. And some parents just, don't bother me. I don't want any communication.
Yeah, just tell me, where do I drop the kid off?
Right. Just let me know that.
Yeah.
And so I guess I've been a little sensitive to that, meaning I never wanted to I don't know, for lack of a better word, bother the parent who doesn't want communication. But it was in this meeting during our ward conference. There was a sister in our ward who's brilliant, and she said, in the youth or in the ward, we are really efficient in our communication. We're not necessarily effective. And what she said is, we're really good at sending out mass text and emails and announcements, but we're not necessarily effective in our communication. And that was one of those things that punched me in the gut. I thought, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And so I have made a commitment that for this year's High Adventure, I'm going to have a face-to-face with each parent. Say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. And if church is to support the family, I really need to know what the parent wants. Meaning, Bobby is your son. How can we best support you and your family and your son with the young men's program? What do you want from the church to support your son?
Yeah.
That is my commitment this year. That's the thing that I've learned this year, is to have more effective communication with the parents.
That's great. And so does that look like, I mean, do you just, about how many young men are you engaging with?
Boy, our priest quorum right now is really big. We're probably looking at, I think, 12 to 14 boys that will go backpacking this summer.
Cool. And then you just sort of make it an effort to make sure you get around to their home within a certain period of time, like near the beginning of the year, or?
Yeah, so that's actually what I'm starting now, is just, and maybe it's not even in their home, but it's connecting with the parents at church or at their home, and just say, hey, how can we best support your family and your son?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just love that approach of, and it's tricky at the same time, because I'm just thinking of my youth, like I hated camping, I hated scouting. Like I was one of the kids my mom said, if you get your eagle, like then you can decide whether you go on a camp out or not. So I got it at 15. I think I still went to a few, but nonetheless, it was like I actually needed that. I needed someone to put me in those situations. I needed that experience, and I'm much more, developed as a adult human being because of those things. And so I think it's I'm sure as you'll learn some things maybe you can integrate on the preparation or at the high adventure activity, but I'm sure maybe not a lot say, what my kid needs is for you to take him into the mountains and and had to do a hard hike for 6 days, right?
Well, yes, but my experience thus far has been the parents do want that for their kids.
Right.
They do want them to do hard things just because maybe when we were kids, it was a little easier. Now it takes, I wouldn't say it's harder, but it takes a little more intention to do physical things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else about communication we haven't hit on?
Oh, there is one other thing. One of the other things in this parent meeting, or as I discuss face to face with parents, is really letting them know that high adventure is just the tool. Really, the whole goal is to help their sons develop testimonies of Jesus Christ and to build character that will allow them to stand up for the Savior during good times and tough times. So that's the other communication thing is sharing that, communicating that to the parents so they know, yes, we're going to go do this great adventure, but the adventure really is just about developing those things.
Yeah, and I think that's really important that parents capture the vision of the developmental factors involved, right? That we're not just going away to have fun over a weekend and, you got a soccer tournament or a family thing. Like, okay, darn it, you can't come. Like, this is something where the parents could hopefully capture the vision and say, okay, we really need to make sure we guard that week, and we're not planning something, just randomly on that week, that we really want this experience for our child, right?
I have found that to be the case, that parents, if they know that and they see that we're doing good things, they prioritize that because they want their sons to have that experience.
It's cool. All right. Last principle you have is finding Jesus.
Yes.
So you do work Jesus into all this, huh?
Yes. Allow me to say this first, is this part of it is very, my heart's very sensitive to. Just because I have had, and I have seen boys have incredible experiences with this. One of these men that I referred to earlier, his name is Jerry Bastian, and he taught me this thing of how to find Jesus, but in a very easy way. And I don't know if this is the right way to do this, but if you go in your scriptures to Moses, chapter 6, verse 63. Can I read this verse?
Yeah, please.
And behold, all things have their likeness, and all things are created and made to bear record of me, both things which are temporal and things which are spiritual, things which are in the heavens above and things which are on the earth, and things which are in the earth, and things which are under the earth, both above and beneath. All things bear record of me.
Love it.
At the beginning of this, every year we read this with the young men, and I say, okay, what things in the world, or what things testify of Jesus Christ? And they go, everything does. And I said, you're right. So what we're going to do is, in everything we do, everything we experience, we're going to look for him. And so if I can share here an example here. So like last month, we one of the things that we did is we learned how to use backpacking water filters. And so at the end of the activity, I said, okay, boys, you know, in what things testified of Jesus Christ to you in this experience? And this young man, he's kind of quiet. Some even might call him a little awkward. He shared one of the most beautiful things. And he said, you know, I see Jesus in the water filter because, you know, a water filter, you take this dirty water under the filter and it goes through the filter and it comes out clean. And he said, we come unto Jesus. And when he goes through us and we go through him, then we come out clean. So it's just things like that where the boys start looking for Jesus in all the little things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. And really with these high adventure outdoorsy experiences, you know, at least my experience has been is you don't have to find Jesus, he often finds you. Like as you remove yourself from just the hustle and bustle of, you know, modern day and the technologies and man, when you that there's something about no Wi-Fi or no cell service that kind of frees your soul a little bit. You know.
Indeed, it does. In
Yeah.
fact, you know, a lot of research shows that if you give yourself at least 72 hours of being unplugged, you can change your mind, you can change your brain.
Yeah.
And we have this week long where we're unplugged, where we're doing something really hard and it humbles us. And then we start looking for Jesus and we have life changing experiences.
Yep. Love it. Love it. So good. Anything else about finding Jesus that we haven't mentioned or
The other thing I would add to this, you know, every time you have had Dan Duckworth on,
uh-huh.
I will listen to him over and over and over and over again.
Nice.
Um, and you know, one of the things he said in one of your episodes, he says, you know, and I think he was referring to the something in the youth program. He says it's not just to build testimonies, but it's, you know, it's to get them to develop a testimony and develop character
Yeah.
to, I guess, stand up for Jesus. And I think I think he references, it's Matthew 26:75, where Peter, you know, denies Christ 3 times. And so that's another thing that I've added this year is let's also focus on developing some character. So, you know, there's going to be some point in your life, young man, that you're going to have to really stand up for Jesus. And having a testimony is good, but you also need to be able to do this.
Love it. Anything else we missed?
A couple of it just come to mind.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me reading another, you know, one of the things I've been focusing on this year is this verse here in First Nephi chapter 18, verse 3. And it says, and I, Nephi, did go into the mount oft, and I did pray oft unto the Lord. Wherefore the Lord showed unto me great things. So one of the other things that we try to do is pray a lot. Meaning, you know, oftentimes in church activities, we'll have an opening prayer and a closing prayer, or maybe a blessing on the food. I've learned the power of just frequent intentional prayer. One person prayers and says amen, and then, you know what, why don't we pray again? Okay, now Billy, you pray. Okay, now Steve, now you pray. And yeah, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I mean, it makes sense to, or it's so easy to remember to pray like before the meal times, right? And
Yeah.
you're just sort of naturally in that habit, and maybe in the morning before you head out on activity, maybe there, right, or a closing like a group prayer before you all retire for the night. But to be more intentional of saying, let's stop for a moment and ask for something or pray for something, or and weaving that in throughout the experience.
And if I can share an example of that, well, it's probably been a couple years ago. We went on trek to Martin's Cove as a ward, and we're starting out the day. We have an opening prayer, and somebody said, well, I think it was one of the youth, says we should pray again. So we prayed again. Had somebody else pray, and I want to say we had 6 different people, maybe 5 different people pray one right after the other. And after that last one, everybody was just silent. There was such a spirit and such a feeling of, this is the spirit. Let's bask in that. And then you go on and you do your activity. But yeah, praying a lot.
Yeah. And again, these are just the power of these high adventure like type of experiences, is that, I mean, sure, you could, at your weekly activity pray a lot, or, during your Sunday lesson, but again, there's just something about removing yourself from the world up into the mountains. It's a temple experience type of thing, where it's like we're closer to God, so let's communicate closer with him. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yes. Yes.
That's cool.
Here's another thing I will add. This is a kind of a left turn here. Of all my years in working with the young men, one of the things that I hope this is okay to say that I'm most proud of is the culture we developed amongst the young men and the leaders, this group of leaders that we had. And every time one of these young men goes on a mission, we get together to be there for their mission announcement. And when they come home, we all get together. And it's almost like we have these little mini reunions. Maybe that's too strong, but these little get-togethers where we're together and we talk about, hey, do you remember when we did this? And you remember we did that? And just hearing these boys talk about that, it has been a wonderful experience. And the thing that I think really started it, or when I first started to recognize it, in 2016, we did a mountain bike trip, and we mountain biked the White Rim Trail, which is in Canyonlands National Park. And on our very first day of this activity, we got to where we were camping. We set up camp, and then we rode our bikes down to the Colorado River, which was probably a mile or 2 away from where we were camping. We all went down there, and then we headed back up to go back to where we camped. Well, there was one of the boys who was, let's say, physically not as strong as the other boys. So he kind of fell to the back. And one of the other young men leaders kind of stayed with him and helped him up back to camp. And when they got back to camp, this one boy and this adult leader, his name's Brian Luloff. And he, I think he'd be okay with me saying this, but he got mad at the boys. He let them know how disappointed he was in them, that they all took off and left this one young man lingering in the back or kind of on his own. And from that day on, the rest of that activity and all other high adventures we had after that, they're the group of boys that were faster, better, would get done. But soon as they would get to, for example, on this bike trip, they'd get to the top of a hill. Let's say we're biking up this big hill. They'd get to the top of that hill, drop their bikes, run down to the bottom of the hill, and walk or run or with this whomever was next, helping them up that hill till they got to the top. And then they'd all run down to the bottom and help the next boy, just walking, running, encouraging them. So we had, we developed this culture. And I shouldn't say we, it's like I had anything to do with it. There was a culture that was built among the boys and the leaders that we loved Jesus and we loved each other. And it was, we still talk about things because of that.
Yeah. Man, those are great stories. And I mean, that's the type of stuff that you could teach 100, Sunday school classes, but none will stick like that type of an experience, and they'll just carry it with them. It's powerful. Awesome. Well, Ned, this has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. I hope people have been inspired by this, and it will hopefully give young men and young women these types of experiences that can really change them. And this is one maybe listen to a couple times, pick up on the nuances of everything from the parent meetings to the in-home visits to the planning to the showing the videos and all that. So this is powerful stuff. I'm so grateful you reached out so we can share this with the world. And as you think back on these experiences, I mean, this was a leadership role that you had, and how has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
Because I have always wanted these experiences to be about becoming better followers of Jesus Christ. It just makes me focus on him. So an activity, whether it's high adventure or something else, it's never about that activity. This activity is about finding Jesus Christ. And so it's just taught me to always be looking for him in all that I do.